Introduction: the bio-quantum axis of the human being. The world we perceive through our senses constantly deceives us with the crushing illusion of solidity. We look in the mirror and see a dense assembly of flesh, bone, and cartilage subjected to gravity and the inexorable wear of chronological time. However, when we observe our own biology through the lens of quantum physics, it fades. That solidity vanishes completely. We are not static structures. We are conscious matter, electromagnetic oscillators in a perpetual state of vibration, interacting every millisecond with a unified field of infinite possibilities. At the geometric and energetic center of this vibrational architecture stands the spinal column. For centuries, traditional anatomy has treated it exclusively as a biomechanical support pillar and a passive conduit for the electrical impulses of the nervous system. But this is barely observing the surface of its true purpose. The dorsal spine is, in its deepest essence, a forgotten technology. It is a biological antenna. Its 33 vertebrae are not simple blocks of calcium stacked by biological evolution. They are resonant nodes of a hyper-sophisticated antenna, mathematically designed to receive, decode, and transmit high information frequencies through the fabric of space-time. To reach its full potential, we must apply harmonic spatial flow. We must apply the principles of harmonic spatial flow directly within our interior. Just as the vitality of a physical environment depends on the free circulation of energy, avoiding stagnation and oppressive angles, our anatomical topology requires impeccable order. When the spine misaligns due to emotional trauma, it fails. Postural collapse, or the dense inertia of fear, creates structural blockages. These knots act as dead corners in our biophysical network, cutting off the quantum signal and isolating us from the surrounding cosmic intelligence. The fundamental purpose of this book is to give you the tools to restore that lost conductivity. Throughout the following chapters, we will explore how to tune your physical structure and nervous system to enter into direct resonance with the pulsations of the great central sun. In both the frontiers of astrophysics and the oldest wisdom traditions, this galactic core is not just a massive emitter of light and gravity. It is the primordial transmitter of the cosmic waves that endow our corner of the universe with order and purpose. By consciously clearing each of the 33 nodes of your spinal column, from the heavy grounding in the coccyx to the refined crystal compass in your atlas bone, you will cease to operate as a closed entropic system. You will stand as a true bio-quantum axis. You will transform your body, moving from being a receiver drowned in the static of the third dimension to a high-fidelity channel capable of translating the universe into palpable experience. Prepare to redefine the limits of your own anatomy. The calibration of your antenna begins now. Chapter 1: The Sacred Geometry of the Spinal Column. The architecture of the universe is not a stochastic accident, it is a language. From the logarithmic spiral of a galaxy to the arrangement of petals in a lotus flower, nature expresses itself through precise mathematical proportions. Human biology, far from being an exception to this cosmic rule, is perhaps its most sophisticated culmination. However, mechanistic medicine has dissected the human body by isolating it from its quantum environment. It treats it as a combustion engine instead of what it truly is, a harmonic oscillator designed to capture, process, and emit information. To understand the true magnitude of our own anatomy, we must raise our gaze above the microscope. We must enter the topology of the sacred. We must understand that flesh and bone, when organized under the laws of universal geometry, transcend their inert condition to truly become conscious matter. This matter is capable of observing and modifying the very fabric of reality. At the epicenter of this transmutation lies the spinal column, the fractal design of the body and the Feng dimension. A fractal is a geometric object whose basic structure, fragmented or irregular, repeats at different scales. It is the signature of the infinite written in a finite space. If we observe the macroscopic universe, we see filaments of dark matter connecting galaxy clusters in a vast cosmic web. This is the blueprint of the grand architecture. If we apply the Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, and direct our gaze inward, we find an exact mirror, the central nervous system. The spinal cord acts as the main filament from which infinite ramifications emanate toward the confines of the body. The spine is not a simple straight column, it is a standing wave. It is a standing wave crystallized in calcium. Its natural curves, cervical lordosis, thoracic kyphosis, lumbar lordosis, and sacrococcygeal kyphosis, are not mere whims of bipedal adaptation. They are the physical manifestation of a mathematical wave function, a design that allows for impact absorption and frequency propagation. We can mathematically describe the propagation of an energy wave along this axis using the fundamental quantum wave function equation. Here, the probability amplitude of vital energy flows through the spatial coordinate x dollars the column over time t. Id each bar nafrak and psi xt he left frac plus vik x eit e psi xt wides. In this biological metaphor, the potential Vx das represents the structural and emotional resistance stored in each vertebra. When the spine loses its natural curvature due to trauma, sedentary lifestyle, or the psychological density of fear, the potential becomes infinite. It creates a wall that collapses the cosmic energy wave function. The signal from the great central sun hits these dead corners and dissipates. Here is where the need for a deep internal spatial harmony comes into play. Just as we seek the optimal circulation of natural forces externally, our body must operate under an absolute Feng dimension. The vertebral arrangement determines electrical viability. If a cluttered exterior environment generates stagnation in a person's life, a collapsed interior environment, a slouched spine, compressed discs, generates stagnation in consciousness. Sacred geometry demands orthogonality and fluidity. It requires each bone to occupy its place in 3D space so the antenna can point toward higher dimensions. The number 33, the mathematics of resonance. Biology tells us the human spinal column consists of 33 vertebrae in early development, 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 4 coccygeal. That the original design of the human being is founded on the number 33 is not an evolutionary coincidence. It is a frequency calibration signature. It is an intentional numeric code. The number 33 has been revered throughout millennia. In the Vedic tradition, there are 33 deities. In Freemasonry, the 33rd degree is the highest level of enlightenment. In Pythagorean numerology, 33 is a master number, symbolizing absolute spiritual guidance. It is the age where the Christ archetype reaches its climax of transmutation. Beyond mysticism, 33 represents a perfect harmonic scale. Think of the spinal column as a parametric equalizer in a high-fidelity musical production. Each vertebra is a frequency band, an independent channel through which the vital current flows. To achieve perfect resonance, the 33 frequencies must be aligned and mixed in phase. When a vertebra is subluxated or blocked, it acts as an out-of-phase wave in an audio spectrum, causing catastrophic phase cancellation. The energy of the upper vertebra hits the resistance of the lower one, nullifying the signal. Instead of a pure tone connecting you to the quantum field, your body emits biological white noise. You feel tired and disconnected, reacting to life from basic instinct instead of creating it from higher consciousness. Each vertebral block handles a specific bandwidth of our reality. The root nodes, Sacrum, Coccyx, handle dense frequencies of survival and telluric connection. They are the human body's subwoofer. The lumbar nodes process the low-mid frequencies of personal power, pure biomechanics, and motor impulse. The thoracic nodes act as high-mid frequencies, interacting magnetically with the heart's toroidal field and empathy. The cervical nodes are high frequencies, the subtlety of thought, the verb, and intuition's logic. For the antenna to vibrate in sympathetic resonance with the great central sun, the full spectrum of the 33 nodes must be free of interference. The body must become an acoustically perfect resonance box. The vibration must ascend from the perineum to the center of the skull without losing decibels of power or signal clarity. Health is not the absence of disease, it is the phase coherence between the 33 frequencies of your central axis. This definition changes our medical paradigm. We move from a defensive posture against symptoms to an offensive strategy of harmonic optimization. We are tuning the biological instrument for the music of the spheres, the spinal cord as fiber optic conduit. To truly understand the spine's function as an antenna, we must look inside the calcium cylinder and examine the living core it protects, the spinal cord. From the perspective of classical neuroscience, the cord is a bundle of axons transmitting impulses. It works through membrane polarization, moving sodium and potassium ions. It is, for all intents and purposes, the wiring of a biological Turing machine. However, quantum biophysics reveals a much deeper layer of reality. The myelin sheaths covering the nerves and the microtubules inside neurons do not just carry electricity, they are light conduits. Literally, it is a photonic communication system. German biophysicist Fritz Albert Popp discovered that all living cells emit light, tiny quantum energy packets he called biophotons. This light is not a random thermal byproduct, but a highly coherent emission similar to a laser. Cells use it to communicate at speeds far exceeding traditional electrochemical transmission. Under this light, the spinal cord ceases to be a simple copper cable and is revealed as a fiber optic conduit of immense capacity. It is the luminous backbone of the body. When we tune our intention and purify our structural channel, we increase biophoton coherence. The column becomes a biological particle accelerator. Coherent light descending from the great central sun, pure quantum information, penetrates through higher centers, the thousand-petaled lotus or pineal gland. It travels down this fiber optic network, irrigating every organ, cell, and atom of our being with a new source code. We are being reprogrammed by light. The rendering of reality. If we accept the cord as a hyperdimensional fiber optic network and the 33 vertebrae as geometric processing nodes, we reach an inevitable conclusion. You are the hardware processing the hologram of your own life. In quantum physics, the double-slit experiment proved that matter exists in a state of probabilistic superposition. It is consciousness that forces the wave to collapse into a solid particle. The universe provides the raw code, the probability waves of the great central sun, but our nervous system must render that information. We convert it into the dense, experiential 3D movie we call life. We are the architects of the observed fact. Think of a high-end computer trying to render an 8K hyper-realistic video. If the processor is overheated, the motherboard has burnt resistors, or transmission cables are bent, the computer will slow down. There will be thermal bottlenecks. The video will stutter, pixels will corrupt, and the system will collapse under its weight. The response time, the ping between your command and the action on screen, will be frustratingly long. The same happens with your bioquantum axis. When your vertebral antenna is misaligned, full of blockages, toxins, and calcified emotional knots, the rendering time of your own existence skyrockets. You experience high latency. You feel trapped in repetitive patterns because your biological hardware lacks the bandwidth to process and collapse new, higher wave functions. You are playing a corrupt, low-resolution hologram of reality. Tuning the 33 nodes is an act of system update. By correcting geometry, you optimize your biological motherboard's topology. You eliminate bottlenecks so biophotons can travel at the speed of light without resistance. This allows cosmic information to manifest in your life without delay. You move from best effort delivery to real-time materialization. You become a high-performance node in the universal network, ready for high-definition living, descent of spirit and ascent of matter. It is crucial to understand that the vertebral antenna is not one way. It is a bidirectional, alternating current system. On one hand, it facilitates the descent of spirit, pure information, high-frequency light, from higher dimensions. It anchors it in the body's density so it can take physical form. Inspiration becomes flesh. On the other hand, it facilitates the ascent of matter, vital energy, kundalini fire, earthly instinct. This dense energy is generated at the base of the spine, in the combustion furnaces of the sacral and lumbar nodes. As this brute force rises through the sacred geometry, it is refined by each node raising its frequency. It reaches the brain as pure, expansive consciousness and unshakable lucidity. The enlightened human is not one who escapes the body for ethereal realms. It is one who has achieved perfect conductivity in both directions. They are the intact bridge between heaven and earth. The axis is the conduit for the cosmic dialogue. When the axis is clear, the individual no longer prays for things to change, but transmits a new order to reality through the electromagnetism of their own central nervous system. You become an active operator of the matrix. Your presence alone as a coherent antenna begins to reorganize the field around you in real time. Responsibility of the axis. Adopting this vision of your own anatomy is a quantum leap involving immense responsibility. You can no longer treat your body as a cargo vehicle. The posture you adopt while sitting at a screen, the way you walk, and how you hold your head cease to be ergonomic problems. They become matters of astrophysics and spirituality. Slumping your shoulders and caving your chest does more than cause neck pain. It literally closes the electromagnetic valve of your thoracic antenna. It smothers your magnetic heart signal and disconnects you from the unified field. You are effectively jamming your own broadcast. You must reclaim your structural sovereignty. Sacred geometry demands respect. It requires daily devotion to axis maintenance. It requires looking at your vertebrae not as fragments of a skeleton designed for decay, but as the 33 steps of Jacob's ladder. They connect the dense earth of your mortal existence to the pulsing stars of the infinite. You are a cosmic pillar. In the following chapters, we will break down this antenna node by node, starting with the liquid environment in which all this sacred geometry is suspended. Because an antenna, no matter how perfect its structure, needs an adequate transmission medium for the waves to come to life. The water within you is the key to the signal. Chapter 2. Cerebrospinal Fluid and Liquid Resonance. The three-dimensional universe we inhabit is, fundamentally, a fluid universe. From the convective currents of stellar plasma to the tides of our terrestrial oceans, life and information propagate through liquid media. The human body, composed of 70% water, is a hydro-resonant ecosystem. Not all water operates on the same octave. There is a supreme distillate, a hyper-filtered elixir that bathes our central nervous system. It acts as the primary transmission medium for the pulsations of the great central sun. That medium is cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. If the 33 vertebrae of the spine are the structural hardware, CSF is the broadband conductive channel. We cannot tune into superior galactic frequencies if the internal medium is stagnant or contaminated by emotional dissonance. Mastering the flow of this internal ocean is the indispensable step to igniting the latent technology of our central axis. Traditional medicine describes CSF as a colorless liquid that acts as a buffer, but this vision is tragically reductionist. From the perspective of quantum biophysics, CSF is more than a cleaning liquid or hydraulic cushion. It is water in a state of extreme crystalline structuring. Research on exclusion zone water has shown that water molecules organize into perfect hexagonal matrices upon contact. These matrices act as semiconductors, capable of storing and transmitting information almost instantaneously. Cerebrospinal fluid reaches the highest state of liquid structuring in all human biology. It is literally a liquid crystal in motion. Like any quartz crystal in a radio transmitter, its main function is resonance. The CSF picks up vibrations from the environment, both dense 3D electromagnetic frequencies and subtle scalar waves from the quantum field, and encodes them. This liquid does not just bathe your physical brain, it bathes your consciousness. If your fluid is charged with stress chemicals, your rendered reality will be survival. The hydrodynamics of enlightenment. For an antenna to function optimally, the wave must propagate without encountering chaotic resistances that destroy phase coherence. In acoustic physics and hydrodynamics, the behavior of pressure waves within a closed cylinder, like the neural tube of the spine, responds to precise mathematical laws and resonant principles. The resonant frequency Fandalas depends on the column length Dauladas and wave speed Vaulalas in the liquid. Dfn yin ifrak. To optimize this frequency and allow higher harmonics, and trasher 1, 2, 3 fell, the liquid medium, V Doldlo, must be pristine and conductive. The cavity structure, Entrel dulls, must lack obstructions. Here, body topology interacts with the physical world. If posture is collapsed, the hydrodynamic pressure of the CSF is altered. Forced curves act as bottlenecks. Fluid mechanics teaches us that when a tube's cross-sectional area decreases, velocity increases, but pressure drops, generating turbulence. A subluxated spine generates turbulent flow in the cerebrospinal fluid. This turbulence destroys subtle information. It is equivalent to trying to listen to a high-fidelity symphony underwater while someone violently agitates the surface. For the great central sun's information to be decoded, the fluid must reach a state of perfect laminar flow, sliding in dynamic and harmonic stillness. Acoustic treatment and the body's spatial dimension. Think of the body's interior as a recording studio. If you place a high-power speaker in an empty room with bare walls and hard angles, sound waves bounce out of control. Standing waves will be created where certain bass frequencies accumulate, muddying the mix. To fix this, you apply acoustic treatment to the space. You place bass traps in corners and diffusers on walls to absorb residual energy and guide the sound, allowing the pure frequency to be heard with absolute clarity. Your spine and CSF flow require the same precision. Emotional trauma and fear act as hard reflectors in your internal room, creating standing waves of pain. Dense energy gets trapped in the lumbar or cervical region, muddying your energetic mix. You cannot hear subtle cosmic intuition if your internal frequency is saturated with white noise. Aligning the 33 vertebrae and releasing CSF flow is the act of applying acoustic treatment to your biology and your nervous system. By doing so, you eliminate destructive interference. You transform your body into an acoustically perfect enclosure, ensuring that the subtle electrical signal generated at the sacrum base arrives intact and powerful at the pineal gland. The CSF is the recording medium. Your job is to ensure the studio is silent. The biomagnetic oscillator, the sacrocranial pump. Cerebrospinal fluid does not flow driven by a traditional cardiac motor. It moves through a much subtler and more powerful mechanism, the sacrocranial pump. This system is an extremely low-frequency oscillator. Cranial bones are not rigidly welded and immobile. They possess a very slight degree of flexibility. At the same time, the sacrum performs a minuscule movement of nutation and counternutation with each breath. When you inhale, the skull expands and the sacrum tilts, creating negative pressure that sucks the CSF upward. When you exhale, the skull contracts and the sacrum returns, pushing the liquid downward. It is a pump. But the miracle is not just mechanical, it is electromagnetic. CSF is rich in charged ions like sodium, potassium, and calcium. It is, for all physiological purposes, an electrolyte conductor. Maxwell's laws dictate that a moving charge generates a magnetic field. The spine acts as a biological electromagnet. We approximate this phenomenon using the Biot-Savart law, where the magnetic field, Harmath BF dollars, is proportional to the ionic current, Tylus, Darmath BF, Manefrak. When we accelerate the pump through deep rhythmic breathing, we increase the ionic flow IDO-dollars, creating a powerful toroidal magnetic field around the entire body. This toroid is a measurable electromagnetic plasma shield that acts as the antenna's receptor field. The more intense the liquid flow, the more potent the magnetic field. Consequently, the individual has a greater capacity to attract, tune, and decode superior frequencies. You become a high-voltage magnet for light. Acceleration practice, spinal breathing. Knowing you possess this technology is useless if you don't learn to turn it on. To tune the antenna, you must move the CSF out of lethargy and infuse it with kinetic energy. This is achieved through the alchemy of spinal breathing, a practice that joins mental focus with specific muscular contraction to fire the current. First, align the antenna. Sit with a perfectly straight spine so the 33 vertebrae form an uninterrupted vertical axis. Feel gravity pulling the coccyx down and the sky pulling the crown up. Next, the base seal, Mula Bandha. Contract the muscles of the perineum to mechanically block the lower end of the dural tube. This closes the escape valve so pressure must travel upward. Then, the vacuum pump, inhalation. Breathe slowly through the nose, imagining air entering the base of your spine. As lungs expand, contract lower abdominal muscles, pushing the diaphragm up. This increases intra-abdominal pressure, pushing CSF through the cord. Follow the current with conscious attention. Feel the electrical pressure rise through the lumbar, thoracic, and cervical nodes. Intent acts as an additional magnetic field that guides the liquid ions. When the fluid reaches the pineal gland, hold your breath and maintain the contractions for the piezoelectric impact. Cerebrospinal fluid pressure pushes against the tiny calcite crystals in the pineal gland. This mechanical stress causes the crystals to release flashes of electromagnetic light or biophotons. Finally, the stellar bath, exhalation. Exhale slowly, relaxing contractions as the ionized fluid bathes the entire system. Neurochemical baptism and reality alteration. The impact of purifying and accelerating cerebrospinal fluid transcends the purely physical. It is the catalyst for radical neurochemical transformation. When this electromagnetically supercharged fluid hits the brain under high pressure, it alters the functions of the superior endocrine system and the neural pathways. The pineal and pituitary glands respond by synthesizing neurotransmitters of higher octaves. Melatonin and serotonin transmute at a molecular level, producing derivatives like DMT, often called the spirit molecule. This is not a drug-induced hallucination. It is the synthesis of superior vision generated by your biochemistry. When the spinal cord carries this optimized fluid, the brain becomes hypercoherent. The two cerebral hemispheres synchronize, and brain waves fall from stressed beta states to the highly harmonic frequencies of alpha, theta, or gamma. In this state, the observer, you, ceases to be fragmented into conflicting parts. Your consciousness reaches perfect fluidity. Reality begins to shape itself not from the exhaustive effort of your 3D ego, but from the harmonic resonance of your biomagnetic field. Synchronicities become the norm because your internal water is now tuned to the same frequency as the great central sun's quantum sea. The refinement of the internal aqueduct. To maintain this state, one must treat the body as a sacred aqueduct. In many ancient civilizations, the purity of water supply determined the health of the empire. In your bioquantum empire, the purity of the CSF determines the health of your manifestations. Toxicity in the blood eventually permeates the dural sheath. Inflammatory diets, dehydration, and heavy metals act as sludge in the spinal conduit. This sludge increases the viscosity of the CSF, which, according to the laws of fluid dynamics, requires more work to move. A more viscous fluid dampens the vibrations. It is like trying to play a violin string covered in thick oil. Therefore, the bioquantum operator must prioritize biological hygiene. Drinking structured water, mineralizing the body, and maintaining an alkaline environment are not lifestyle choices. They are technical requirements for antenna maintenance. You are preparing the medium for the most important broadcast of your life. The dural membrane and the tensegrity of the soul. The CSF is contained within the dura mater, a tough, inelastic membrane that surrounds the brain and spinal cord. This membrane is the casing of your fiber optic cable. If the dura mater is under tension due to cranial misalignments or pelvic tilts, it creates kinks in the hose of your internal ocean. Osteopathy and craniosacral therapy recognize that the dura mater is a continuous sheet of connective tissue. Tension at the base of the skull can manifest as a blockage in the sacrum. This is the principle of tensegrity. A change in one part of the system affects the whole. Your axis is a single unified unit. By releasing dural tension, you allow the CSF to oscillate freely. You remove the static from the line. Imagine the relief of a kinked garden hose finally being straightened. The water pressure returns instantly. This is the sensation of a spinal release, a sudden surge of power that illuminates the brain's dark corners. Ionization of the breath, the electric wind. The air we breathe is not just a collection of gases. It is a carrier of prana, or life force, which manifests as negative ions. When you breathe through the nose, the air passes over the turbinates, which are rich in nerves connected to the brain. This friction ionizes the air, creating a microelectric charge. When combined with spinal breathing, this electric wind further charges the CSF. You are effectively charging your battery with every conscious breath. The spinal column becomes a capacitor. storing this charge until it reaches the breakdown voltage required to trigger a quantum leap in consciousness. This is why ancient texts call the breath the bridge. It bridges the gap between the gross physical matter and the subtle electrical impulses of the soul. By mastering the ionization of the breath, you control the voltage of your internal antenna. You decide how much power you are willing to project into the matrix. The oceans return, living as a superconductor. Once the medium is purified and the pump is active, you enter the state of the living superconductor. In this state, there is no delay between thought and action, between intention and result. The CSF carries the command packets of your will to every cell in the body with zero resistance or transmission loss. You no longer live in a state of reaction to the external world. You are the emanation point. The great central sun is not a distant object. It is a frequency that you now host within your own internal ocean. You move through the 3D world as a ripple in the quantum field, a wave of order in a sea of chaos. The ocean within you has found its rhythm. The studio is silent. The recording has begun. In the next chapter, we will explore the specific room tuning required to prevent the return of stasis. We will learn how to defend the axis from the static of others and how to maintain the Feng of the soul. Chapter 3. Internal Feng Shui and Body Topology. For millennia, Eastern masters have observed the world with an acuity that modern science is only beginning to quantify. They understood that space is not an empty container, but a living tissue. The art of Feng Shui was born from this. The geometric arrangement of objects determines mathematically how qi flows through that environment. If you build walls at aggressive angles or allow clutter to accumulate, the flow stagnates, the environment densifies, and vitality decays. However, the most common error is applying this wisdom only to exterior architecture. We buy water fountains and clear our living rooms, but we inhabit our bodies like abandoned mansions. True energy mastery begins with internal Feng Shui. Your body is a complex topological structure. The way you organize your interior space, bone alignment, fascia tension, and respiratory amplitude dictates the fidelity with which your 33-node antenna receives transmissions from the great central sun. You must achieve alignment. When you achieve perfect alignment, you enter the Feng dimension, a state of spatial hyperconductivity where physical matter and the quantum wave synchronize without resistance. To understand this topology, we must discard the Newtonian view of the skeleton. The spine is not a simple stack of bony bricks held by compression. The human body operates under tensegrity, tensional integrity. Coined by Buckminster Fuller, this principle describes a structure stabilized by a continuous network of tension, fascia and muscles, balanced by a discontinuous network of compression, bones. In perfect tensegrity, a load is distributed evenly through the structure. The 33 vertebrae are floating in this tension network. When your internal Feng Shui is harmonic, your spine supports no weight. It levitates within its own field of balanced forces. But what happens when disorder invades? Sedentarism and unprocessed emotion act like heavy furniture thrown carelessly into your temple's hallway. If you maintain a posture of defeat, slumped shoulders, sunken chest, you alter the tensegrity network. Tension accumulates, bones compress, and sacred geometry collapses. In electromagnetism, current density math BF dollars is proportional to the electric field math multiplied by conductivity math sigma dollars according to Ohm's law. 1 math BF sigma 1 math B. In our bioquantum analog, Haas math BF dollars is the great central sun's pulse. Haas math BF dollars is the amount of consciousness you embody, but the critical factor is sigma dollar, your internal conductivity. When topology is distorted, conductivity, Ha sigma dollars, plummets. No matter how powerful the signal is, if your internal space is chaos, the current will not flow. Dead corners and the physics of stagnation. In architectural Feng Shui, a dead corner is a dark, angular spot where air doesn't circulate and dust accumulates. It is an entropy sink. In your body's topology, dead corners form where the fluidity of the natural spinal curve breaks into an angle of chronic tension. Modern humanity accumulates these in 3 main areas: the cervico-thoracic hinge, base of the neck, where neck mobility meets ribcage rigidity. When hunching over screens, the bowling ball weight of the head creates devastating leverage. Fascia thickens to protect the spinal cord, creating a hump of stagnation. This corner strangles biophoton flow right before it reaches the brain. The solar plexus, diaphragmatic curve, the center of emotions and will. When experiencing fear, we instinctively slouch to protect vital organs, sinking the sternum. We collapse the diaphragm, breathing becomes shallow. In hydrodynamics, this stops the sacrocranial pump. CSF loses its kinetic pressure and stagnates. The lumbosacral hinge, base of the spine, where the spine anchors in the pelvis. Life in chairs breaks the pelvic angle. The sacrum tucks inward, cutting the grounding. If the antenna is not rooted orthogonally to the planet's center, high-frequency energy will fry the nervous system, causing chronic stress and insomnia. Dead corners are areas of high dielectric resistance. When quantum energy tries to cross them, it doesn't flow. It crashes and scatters as heat, inflammation, and psychological noise, obsessive thoughts. To enter the Feng dimension, we must realize body topology is a holographic map of your emotional history. Connective tissue, or fascia, is a crystalline polymer with piezoelectric properties. When fascia undergoes mechanical stress, it generates electricity. Conversely, an electrical charge, emotion, causes it to contract. Trauma manifests in this network. Unprocessed grief or rage sends a massive discharge through the nerves. If not released, the charge is stored in the fascia. Through the continuous piezoelectric effect, the tissue densifies and calcifies around the emotional knot, creating physical armor. Your body alters its topology to accommodate trauma. The spine deviates. You create a geometric dead corner to house a dead memory. Deformation of a space reduces its flow invariant. We apply the divergence theorem to pranic energy flow tun mathb dals through the volume v da tundalas of your fascial network. Roinient v abla ak dot is math bf. An dv an equire a cancel aint la math bf ak dot do math beef die. In the Feng dimension, flow through surface your partial v dollars is maximum. Emotional calcification alters the field divergence, ba abla ein dot de mathbef, creating internal sink zones where energy collapses. You become a closed system, recycling old pain, unable to receive new quantum information. Internal Feng Shui isn't just stretching, it is dissolving crystallized memory to restore superconductivity. Orthogonal alignment, the cross of manifestation. Alignment is not about rigid military posture. Rigidity is just another form of tension. We refer to orthogonal alignment, the mathematical concept of perpendicular independence. Imagine a 3D coordinate system in your body. The z-axis is the absolute vertical line. It connects the Earth's core gravity to the cosmic force. It passes through the perineum, up the spinal center, and out the crown. X and Y axes represent the horizontal plane of matter, society, and relationships. For the antenna to work with maximum fidelity, the Z-axis, spine, must be perfectly orthogonal to the plane of matter. If you lean forward or back, the Z-axis deviates. In antenna physics, if the radiant element is not oriented correctly to the incident wave, polarization loss occurs. Efficiency plummets. Being in the Feng dimension means holding the cross of manifestation in perfect orthogonality. When you stand with an elongated spine, letting tensegrity work, the Z-axis becomes superconducting. Only when perfectly aligned in the vertical now can you effectively radiate intention into the horizontal plane of experience. The universe does not reward exhausting effort. It responds to structural resonance. You cannot manifest a higher order if your vehicle transmits from geometric distortion. You must clear the temple. Clearing the temple, conscious geometry. Entering the Feng dimension requires laser consciousness applied to your own dark matter. You must become the architect of your internal space. These practices are the fundamental tools for clearing your antenna. Topological shadow scan, energy flows where attention goes. Most tension exists because the mind abandoned it. Sit in silence and visualize your body as a 33-story building. Mentally climb from the basement, Coccyx, paying attention to dark rooms. Where does the signal weaken? Don't force relaxation. Simply observe the dead corner. Quantum observation brings biophotons, light, to that dark zone, dissolving calcification. Volumetric expansion breathing. Stressed humans breathe linearly, ignoring the 3D nature of lungs. To restore space, you must breathe volumetrically. Imagine lungs as spheres. Inhale and feel them expand forward, sideways, and backward against the vertebrae. This 360-degree breath separates vertebrae, creating space. Central axis unblocking, micro-movements. Rigidity is the wave's enemy. To keep the spine as liquid crystal, you must hydrate it through movement. Not jerky gym movements, but serpentine ones. Stand with knees flexed. Move the spine's base in coin-sized circles. Let the movement ascend slowly, vertebra by vertebra. This subtle movement breaks fascial inertia, squeezing connective tissue to expel stagnant toxins and allowing CSF to penetrate dry joints. You are greasing the antenna's gears. Internal Feng Shui is not a destination. Gravity and modern stress will constantly seek to collapse your structure. It is a daily recalibration. The rewards of the Feng dimension are incalculable. When dead corners open and the Z-axis stands orthogonal, something fundamental changes. Chronic exhaustion vanishes because your body stops fighting itself. The mind becomes sharp and silent. You become a perfect empty chalice, ready to be filled by the universe. You have prepared the temple's architecture and purified the water. The bio-quantum infrastructure is ready. Now we must descend to the pure hardware level. We must examine the foundations of this antenna to understand how it anchors to the planet, allowing the stellar download to begin without frying our circuits. Chapter 4. The root nodes, Coccyx and Sacrum, the grounding. Any telecommunications engineer or high-capacity systems architect knows an unshakable law of transmission physics. You cannot erect an antenna designed to capture massive frequencies if you have not first secured an impeccable grounding. If a steel mast is struck by lightning and lacks a conducting cable, the energy will not dissipate. Instead, it will seek the path of least resistance through the system's circuits, frying motherboards, melting processors, and reducing the most sophisticated technology to smoking ash. The human being, operating as a bio-quantum axis, is subjected to exactly the same thermodynamic and electromagnetic law in this three-dimensional plane. We constantly seek enlightenment, connection with the stars, the download of information from the great central sun, and the expansion of our minds toward the higher octaves of consciousness. We want to render a hyper-lucid reality in our lives. But processing this level of quantum information demands a monumental flow of energy. If your biological power supply is not correctly anchored to the electromagnetic core of the planet, the overload of high frequencies will collapse your nervous system. That collapse does not look like smoke coming out of your ears. It manifests as paralyzing anxiety, chronic insomnia, disconnection, and nervous breakdowns. It is the energy of heaven trying to be processed in a body that does not know how to discharge the excess toward the earth. For the 33-node antenna to operate in the Feng dimension, the journey does not begin by looking up, but by anchoring violently downward. It begins in the absolute foundation, the 9 root nodes, anatomy of the foundation, the sacred bone, and the evolutionary tail. At the base of your spinal column, wedged between the iliac bones of the pelvis like the keystone of a Roman arch, lies the sacrum. Its own name, derived from the Latin os sacrum, sacred bone, reveals the reverence that ancient anatomists and mystics felt for this structure. It is composed of 5 vertebrae fused in adulthood. Just below the sacrum, hanging as the last vestige of our evolutionary tail, is the coccyx, composed of another 4 fused vertebrae. Together, these 9 root nodes are your body's gravitational sink. They are the exact point where the Z-axis, your vertical line of consciousness, intersects with your biological center of mass. At a biomechanical level, the sacrum has the Herculean task of transferring the entire weight of the upper body toward the legs and ultimately toward the ground. But at a bio-quantum level, its function is even more vital. It is the transducer that translates the Earth's electromagnetic force into an assimilable format. The Earth is not an inert rock. It is a gigantic spherical battery that pulses at specific frequencies, such as the Schumann resonance, fundamentally at 7.83 Hz, which curiously coincides with human theta and low alpha brain waves. Furthermore, the terrestrial surface possesses an immense net negative charge of free electrons. When the root nodes of your antenna are correctly aligned orthogonally toward the ground, they act as a three-phase plug. They absorb these free electrons, which act as nature's most potent antioxidants, neutralizing free radicals and putting out the inflammation or thermal resistance in your body's fascia network. Impedance and signal reflection. To illustrate the critical importance of the base of the spine, we must apply the concept of transmission physics known as impedance matching. In any transmission line, the energy signal travels from a source toward a load. If the impedance of the line does not match perfectly with the load's impedance, signal reflection occurs. The energy that cannot be absorbed by the Earth bounces and travels back upward, clashing against the energy coming down. Mathematically, the reflection coefficient gamma dollars is defined by the difference in impedances between the load, $, and the transmission line, $0. Through gamma, nefrak. If your grounding is perfect, $0, the reflection coefficient is 0. All energy flows harmonically, completing the circuit. But if your coccyx is blocked, tense, or misaligned, the resistance at the base becomes massive, $0 $. In this scenario, Z gamma $1. This means 100% of the energy is reflected back. This standing wave of reflected energy is what psychologists call chronic stress and mental rumination. It is neurological white noise. You feel the need to act, but as your grounding is cut off, the energy bounces off your pelvis and rises to overload your mind, leaving you exhausted but unable to rest or find peace. The acoustics of the pelvis and the frequency of fear. Why does this zone block so easily in the modern human being? The answer lies in our most primitive survival instincts. The sacral and coccygeal nodes are intimately linked to the lowest and densest frequencies of our experience: survival, territory, and physical safety. They are the subwoofer of your anatomy. When we experience deep fear, financial insecurity, or panic of annihilation, the sympathetic nervous system reacts by violently contracting the pelvic floor. Biologically, it is the same reflex that makes a frightened dog tuck its tail between its legs. The coccyx curves rigidly inward, pointing toward the pubis. By tucking the coccyx inward, we destroy the Feng dimension of our pelvis. We close the pelvic bowl. From an acoustic treatment standpoint, a room without proper proportions becomes a resonant nightmare. The sub-bass frequencies of fear get trapped, bouncing in the pelvic cavity, making your consciousness murky. Dense energy accumulates, creating a mass of heavy inertia that drags you toward depression and laziness. For high frequencies of the higher mind to shine, the body needs to isolate and channel grave frequencies. You must treat your own pelvis. You must release the coccyx and allow the frequencies of fear to find the earth. Transforming inertia into impulse. The fundamental error of many spiritual doctrines seeking ascension is the rejection of these lower nodes. They see the dense energy of the first three chakras as something impure that must be transcended or ignored. This is a catastrophic design flaw. In physics and biomechanics, there is no impulse without a base. A rocket does not ascend into space by pulling itself up. It ascends by expelling a monumental amount of fire and violent mass downward. Newton's third law, action and reaction, governs enlightenment as much as it governs ballistics. The fear stored in your root nodes is not space junk. It is compressed fuel. When you align the sacrum and free the coccyx, you allow that stagnant inertia to fall toward the Earth's core. And in response, the planet returns an identical and opposite reaction force, an upward thrust, a wave of telluric prana that rises up the spinal cord with the force of a geyser to illuminate your brain. Bioquantum grounding practices. Tuning the 9 root nodes requires deeply physical work. You cannot think your way to a grounding. You must embody it. Here are the precise mechanics to restore conductivity. Unblocking the pelvic floor, the base trap. Lying on your back with knees bent, bring attention to the space between your sit bones. Inhale and imagine this rhombus expanding, widening the base of your pelvis. As you exhale, simply let go. Do not push, just surrender to gravity. Feel the sacrum bone melt against the floor, becoming heavy and liquid. You are dissolving the cellular fear that keeps your evolutionary tail hidden from the light. Alignment of the sacrum in the Z-axis. When standing or sitting, your pelvis must function like a bowl of water that should not spill forward or backward. If you arch your lower back too much, you spill forward, losing the upward force. If you tuck the coccyx too much, you spill backward, cutting the ground wire. Visualization of the tungsten anchor. Conscious intent directs magnetic energy flow. Close your eyes and visualize a heavy cable, forged in incandescent tungsten, descending from the tip of your coccyx. As you exhale, push this cable through the floor and tectonic layers until anchoring it directly in the Earth's core. The launching pad. When primitive fear stops governing the contraction of your root nodes, you acquire a peculiar invulnerability. You stop being shaken by 3D storms of social or financial crises because your center of gravity has descended. You become like a weighted doll that always returns to its absolute center. In quantum physics, to observe subtle phenomena, the laboratory must be isolated from external vibrations. Your body is that laboratory. The grounding of the sacrum and coccyx isolates your nervous system from the tremors of collective fear. With the 9 nodes anchored, the antenna is ready for industrial voltage. The reflection coefficient has dropped to 0. Background noise has been silenced. Now the pure and stable telluric energy captured from the Earth is ready to ascend to the next station of the transmission line, the boiler room of human anatomy, where inertia will transmute into biomechanical fire. Chapter 5. The Lumbar region, the quantum dynamo. We have secured the grounding. We have descended into the basements of human anatomy to anchor the sacred bone and the coccyx to the Earth's core, dissipating the static of fear and closing the fundamental electrical circuit. Now, with the reflection coefficient minimized and the base acoustically isolated, the telluric energy is ready. Pure telluric energy is ready to ascend. However, the raw energy of the Earth by itself is inert. It is a crude potential that requires a motor to transform into work, movement, and the creative force that shapes three-dimensional reality. That motor, the inexhaustible power supply of your bio-quantum axis, resides in your spine. It resides in the 5 most massive and formidable vertebrae of your spinal column, the lumbar region. If the sacrum is the anchor, the lumbars, L1 to L5, are the quantum dynamo. They are the engine room where the dark matter of your instincts is subjected to extreme thermodynamic pressure to transmute into the light of directed will. Ignoring the physics of this region or subjecting it to asymmetric loads is equivalent to overloading the power supply of a complex computational system. Inevitably, the fuses will blow, the system will bottleneck, and the rendering of your own life will collapse under its own weight. You must respect the power of this industrial stage. The architecture of heavy hardware. Observe the anatomy of a lumbar vertebra. Unlike the delicate and articulated cervical vertebrae, designed for rotation and subtle signal refinement, the lumbar vertebral bodies are immense, thick, and heavy. They look like masonry blocks designed to endure the mechanical punishment of the physical world. They bear the body's weight. They support almost all the weight of the upper body and absorb the massive compression forces generated when walking, running, or lifting objects. But in the Feng dimension, form always obeys the electromagnetic wave function. The massiveness of the lumbars is not just a biomechanical necessity, it is a capacitance requirement. In high-performance hardware engineering, components that handle the largest current flows require the largest heat sinks and the most robust power phases. The lumbar region is your industrial power motherboard. Imagine your consciousness is operating a biological system equipped with an immense working memory of 32 gigabytes. equipped with processors of 8 physical cores designed for titanic tasks. All that processing potential requires a colossal wattage. Energy does not flow directly from the earth to the brain. It must be rectified, filtered, and amplified in the lumbar zone. The 5 lumbar vertebrae act as coils in an electromagnet or as windings. They act as the windings of a dynamo. When the sacrocranial pump pushes the cerebrospinal fluid, that ion-charged electrolyte, upward through the lumbar spinal canal, the movement of the fluid through the dense bone and fascial structure generates an induced current. This is where the conversion of raw energy into usable power happens. We can describe this biological dynamo by adapting Faraday's law of induction. The bio-quantum electromotive force, SMATHCL, generated in your lumbar region is proportional to the rate of change of the telluric magnetic flux, $pi, that passes through the windings of your 5 lumbar vertebrae, N5. Dod en mathcal e fract. The negative sign represents Lenz's law. The created energy will always oppose the change that produces it. This is the pure physics behind the will. Lifting a project, transforming a habit, or altering your reality requires overcoming inertia, magnetic resistance. Your lumbars are the dynamo that generates the exact voltage, mathcult. It generates the voltage necessary to overcome that 3-dimensional inertia. If the flow, dg phi b d tau, is constant and powerful, your will is unshakable. If the flow is erratic or the structure is collapsed, your will breaks before the slightest external resistance. You must maintain the integrity of the generator to sustain the work. The acoustic treatment of low-mid frequencies. In the previous chapter, we established that the pelvis and sacrum handle the sub-bass frequencies of our experience, the acoustic foundations of survival. Following this law of octaves, the lumbar region processes the low-mid frequencies. It is the equalization band where warmth, driving power, and the body of the signal reside. In any production environment or digital audio workstation, you know perfectly well that the low-mid band, between 100 Hz and 300 Hz, is the most dangerous and vital zone of the entire mix. It is where rhythmic instruments compete for space. If you do not apply adequate acoustic treatment to the room or equalize with precision, it fails. The sub-bass frequencies of the sacrum will mask and muddy the power of the lumbars. Your will, lumbars, will be drowned out by your instinctive fears, sacrum. The mix of your life will sound murky, heavy, and without definition. When you allow stress, poor posture, or apathy to collapse your natural lumbar curve, you lose. You are destroying the acoustics of your own resonance box. You are creating standing waves of muscular tension in the psoas muscle and the quadratus lumborum. The energy of creation becomes a closed loop of dull pain. For the quantum dynamo to spin without friction, the internal space must be pristine. Definition requires room. The lumbars need vertical space. When you lengthen the space between the 12th rib and the iliac crest of the pelvis, you are applying a high-pass filter that clears the murkiness. You are equalizing your own biology, ensuring that your abdomen's driving force does not have to compete with the parasitic echoes of your emotional past. The rendering of reality and bottlenecks. Our mind, housed in the upper nodes, is a visualization machine. It is capable of conceptualizing bright futures, monumental projects, and improved versions of ourselves. But the mind does not manifest matter. The mind only writes the code. It is the body, and specifically the lumbar motor, that must execute the code in the physical. The act of materializing a desire in the physical dimension is an amazing algorithmic and thermodynamic task. It is the quantum equivalent of rendering a highly complex video of 2 continuous hours, loaded with multi-layer color corrections, 3D effects, and massive data streams. Your mind previews the result instantly, but your body's hardware has to process every frame of that new reality through linear time. If you demand that your system manifest a reality that requires enormous emotional, physical, and spiritual effort, but your lumbar region is blocked by doubt, poor ergonomics, or trauma, you create a thermal bottleneck. It will hang. Even if you possess a brilliant intellect, a powerful CPU, and a great capacity for empathy and geometric vision, an efficient GPU of, say, 4 gigabytes of dedicated memory, your system cannot sustain the process if the lumbar motherboard cannot deliver the required amperage. The power supply lines will become inflamed. The spinal nerves emanating from the lumbar vertebrae will swell under the load. The flow of cerebrospinal fluid will lose its laminar flow state and become turbulent, dissipating vital energy as waste heat. What is the result in the physical plane? A herniated disc, an episode of paralyzing lumbago, sciatic pain. The sciatic pain runs through your leg like a stripped wire throwing sparks. The medical universe will tell you that you lifted a cardboard box with poor posture. Bioquantum physics will tell you the cardboard box was only the final trigger. The true cause was requiring a render without providing the flow or support. A fuse blew to prevent the overload from igniting the rest of the central nervous system. Acute lumbar pain is, in its rawest form, an emergency shutdown mechanism for biological hardware. You cannot force the render without the wattage. You must clear the path for the current to reach the executors of the mission. Remote power on protocol. Will without tension. The paradigm of effort in the third dimension has deceived us into believing that to generate more energy in the core, we must create immense muscular tension, grit our teeth, and harden the abdomen as if we were going to receive a blow. This is the most inefficient way to operate the quantum dynamo. It wastes energy. Generating massive isometric tension in the lumbar and abdominal region is like trying to make an electric motor spin faster by pressing a steel handbrake against its axis. You are generating force, yes, but you are spending 90% of that force fighting your own piezoelectric resistance in the fascia. It is a loss. In computer systems architecture, there is an elegant technology known as wake-on-LAN, remote power-on. It allows a computer in deep sleep or turned off to receive a magic packet of data through its network card that orders it to turn on its power supply and wake up the operating system remotely. No switch is needed. Your lumbar dynamo has an identical bioquantum function. You do not need an armor of muscular tension to turn on your creative power. You need signal precision. True power resides in the deep stabilizers, the transverse abdominis, the pelvic floor, and the multifidus. You must send a magic packet of information. The remote power-on technique. Standing in perfect orthogonal alignment, relax your belly completely. Let it fall under gravity. Now, instead of aggressively contracting the abdominals, imagine a sphere of warm light the size of a walnut resides 3 fingers below your navel and 2 inches inward. This is your core node. Send a pulse of intention, a simple structured thought like a network code, straight to that sphere. The order is not squeeze, the order is wake up and ascend. You will notice a microscopic energy belt, deep and imperceptible from the outside, tightening gently around your 5 lumbar vertebrae. No tension is felt. There is no tension in the shoulders, no blockage in the breath. You have activated the power supply from the local network of your consciousness. The dynamo is spinning, friction-free, ready to supply the necessary voltage for any physical, intellectual, or metaphysical task. The creative current is now online. The alchemy of hydraulic fire. When the cerebrospinal fluid, our conductive liquid crystal, ascends from the cold stillness of the pelvis and enters the chamber of the 5 lumbar vertebrae, it experiences a phase transition. The lumbars are the fire element within the body's topology, operating paradoxically within a liquid medium. They heat the signal. When you apply the remote power on and sustain your Feng dimension, the harmonic friction of energy rising through this narrow channel generates heat. It is not an inflammatory heat, like that of a disc hernia, but a radiant, alchemical heat. It is prana combustion. We understand this through Joule's law. If your internal resistance, Dantarzens, is high due to fear or misalignment, the immense current, Iodshausen, will generate power dissipated as waste heat and sharp pain. You are wasting the fuel of your will. But if you apply internal treatment and reduce resistance towards zero, fascial superconductivity, the equation transforms. The power is not lost, it is preserved intact in the main flow of the cerebrospinal fluid. That fluid, now electromagnetically supercharged and heated by the lumbar dynamo, begins to boil at a quantum level. It becomes a biophysical plasma. Lumbar fire vaporizes the heavy inertia of the base water into steam. It becomes an electric, light, and highly pressurized steam that desperately seeks its way upward. This pressurized plasma is the vehicle for higher manifestations. It carries the raw ambition of the lower nodes and refines it through the heat of the will, preparing it for the next stage of the bio-quantum journey, integrating the shadow conscious will. There is one last secret encoded in the geometry of L1 to L5. These vertebrae also act as the warehouse of our shadow in the material plane. Just as a computer's power supply accumulates dust in its fans from the air it absorbs, our lumbar region accumulates the residues of actions where we used our will. Actions where we used will from scarcity, manipulation, or rage. Every time we use personal power to force reality, instead of flowing with the great central sun's design, we deposit a layer of energetic carbon in this dynamo's windings. This carbon creates resistance and lowers the efficiency of our creative broadcast. That is why many spiritual seekers suffer from chronic lower back problems. They try to raise their consciousness to the third eye, bypassing the engine room because they fear the raw fire of their own 3D will. They fear greed, aggression, and selfishness. But quantum physics is relentless. You cannot skip a node. If pure telluric energy reaches a lumbar zone obstructed by unrecognized shadow, the voltage will be cut. Clearing the quantum dynamo requires brutal honesty. As you execute spinal breathing, as the pressure wave crosses your lumbars, observe without judgment the sensations of raw power that emerge. Own your power. Own your capacity for destruction and imposition. Only when you embrace the intensity of your own life force without being ashamed of its animal power is the carbon burned, the power supply fans cleaned, and the electron flow made pristine. Your 3D will ceases to be a capricious ego fighting the universe. It aligns orthogonally. The quantum dynamo synchronizes with the cosmic clock, and your personal desire becomes an exact reflection of the great central sun's design. The generator is now purged and performing at peak capacity. You are no longer fighting reality, you are powering the materialization of a higher order. The leap toward the magnetic bridge. With the root nodes anchored in the Earth's abyss and the 5 lumbar nodes spinning as a superconducting motor, we have built the power infrastructure. We have generated pressure, acoustically isolated the enclosure, and turned on the pure electrical flow. The energy is now a torrent of biophysical plasma. It is ascending through the spinal cord at a dizzying speed. It has left behind the realm of survival and raw will. Now this immense thermodynamic voltage is about to crash against the most complex, mysterious, and magnetically expansive transformer of the entire human topology. The next stage is critical. The current must curve around the sanctuary of the thorax. It must enter the field of constructive interference of the 12 nodes that hold the ribcage, the place where electricity meets magnetism, and where will meets the alchemy of empathy and holographic materialization. The heart awaits the charge. We are about to cross the 12-pillar bridge. The journey toward the magnetic heart has begun. The voltage is high, the circuit is stable, and the signal is clear. Prepare for the transformation of raw power into radiant light. The architecture of the heavens is mirrored in the 12 ribs of the monarch. Chapter 6. The Thoracic Bridge. Magnetic alchemy in the chest. The journey of consciousness along the bio-quantum axis is a constant thermodynamic climb. We have established an impeccable grounding in the sacrum, isolating our system from the background noise of primitive fear. We have ignited the quantum dynamo in the lumbar region, where dense inertia vaporizes into high-pressure electric plasma. But pure electricity on its own is a brute and blind force. It is an aggressive voltage that, if it travels directly to the brain without being modulated, breeds a tyrannical mind, hyperactive and devoid of compassion. For the great central sun signal to not only be received, but to become a force capable of altering 3D matter, the upward electrical current must transform. It must acquire gravity, emotional timbre, and spatial expansion. It must enter the sanctuary of alchemy, the thoracic bridge. The 12 thoracic vertebrae, T1 to T12, constitute the longest and structurally most protected segment of the vertebral antenna. It is a long journey. It is not a mathematical coincidence that there are 12 nodes in this region. In acoustics and music theory, 12 semitones compose a complete chromatic scale, covering all possible frequencies within an octave before the pattern repeats at a higher level. The thoracic region is your central octave. It is the keyboard of resonance. The resonance chamber and the master filter. Unlike the lumbar or cervical vertebrae, which float free in their tensegrity network, each of the 12 thoracic nodes articulates directly with a pair of ribs, forming the thoracic cage. From mechanistic anatomy, this is simply a bony armor designed to protect the lungs and heart from traumatic impacts. But there is much more. In the topology of the Feng dimension, the thoracic cage is not a shield. It is an acoustic resonance chamber and an electromagnetic deflector. Imagine the flow of your vital energy rising from the lumbars as if it were the raw signal from an oscillator in a high-end digital synthesizer. What rises from your abdomen is a saw wave. It is an aggressive wave, loaded with dense harmonics and kinetic voltage. If you send that raw wave directly to the main output, your manifest reality, the sound will be harsh, noisy, and uncontrollable. The thoracic bridge acts as the voltage-controlled filter, VCF, and the master bus compressor of your entire biological system. The structure of the ribs and the immense volume of the air-filled lungs act as an internal acoustic treatment. As raw electrical energy enters this expansive vault, it bounces off the walls of the thoracic cage, becomes oxygenated, and softens. The thoracic bridge equalizes your will, cutting the dissonant frequencies of selfishness. The magnetic toroid and Maxwell's equations. In the exact center of this 12-node resonance chamber pulses the organ most misunderstood by modern biology. The heart is not a simple muscular pump. It is the most powerful electromagnetic generator in the human body. Its electric field is 60 times larger than the brain's, and its magnetic field is 5,000 times stronger. The shape of this massive magnetic field is not random. It is a toroid, a donut of pulsing energy that flows from the center outward, curves over itself, and re-enters through the poles. Hyperdimensional mathematics tells us that the toroid is the only geometric shape capable of sustaining itself in a perfect thermodynamic balance. It processes infinite amounts of information while maintaining a defined volume VO structured by its major radius, redolence, and its minor radius, rho. The 12 thoracic vertebrae sit exactly on the vertical axis, the z-axis, of this immense magnetic toroid. You are a center of attraction and high emanation. The second of Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism, Gauss's law for magnetism, dictates that there are no magnetic monopoles. Magnetic field lines always form closed loops. This means that the energy emanating from the heart does not shoot off linearly to be lost in the vacuum. It creates a loop. The thoracic antenna is constantly bathed and informed by the flux lines, a math review of your own emotional state. When the electrical current, your ascending vital force, crosses this magnetic field, the frequency of your feelings, an induction occurs from which a new force is born, pure electromagnetism. The spark is now a magnet. Constructive interference and phase cancellation. Wave physics teaches us that when two frequencies meet in space, they interact. If the intention of your mind, acting as a directing wave, and the emotion of your heart, acting as the magnetic carrier wave, are aligned, you experience constructive interference. This is the secret of the high-resolution manifestation of destiny. In wave mechanics, the total amplitude $2 of two waves in perfect phase coherence is the exact sum of their individual amplitudes. When what you think, what you say, and what you truly feel in the center of your chest are identical frequencies, the amplitudes add up. The result is a colossal electromagnetic pulse, a carrier wave of the highest resolution that expands beyond your thoracic cage, altering the refractive index of the quantum field that surrounds you. The universe has no choice but to reorganize matter to match the resonance of that signal. This is how you change the local reality. However, most human beings live in a chronic state of phase cancellation or destructive interference. They desire one reality in their minds, abundance, health, peace, But in their thoracic chamber, their heart emits the magnetic field of fear, scarcity, unworthiness, or resentment. The signal is neutralized at the point of origin. In music production, if you clone an audio track and invert the phase of one of them by 180 degrees, the result is absolute silence. The sound mathematically cancels itself out. This is exactly what happens in your bio-quantum axis when mind and heart are at war. Electrical energy hits a contradictory magnetic field in the bridge. The collapse of the desire wave function. The universe is not a fixed structure. It is a probabilistic soup, a field of infinite overlapping possibilities. In quantum mechanics, this state is known as the Schrödinger wave function. An electron is not in a specific place until it is measured or interacts with an observer. In that instant, the wave collapses into a particle. Your dreams, your projects, and the realities you wish to embody exist in the quantum field as pure probability waves. They are latent information. But what constitutes the observer powerful enough to force that immense wave function to collapse into the dense matter of your daily life? It is not the biological brain. The intellect only chooses the possibility from the quantum menu. The real observer, the gravitational force that pulls the possibility toward matter, is the heart's magnetic field interacting through the thoracic bridge. Think of it as rendering a massive, high-resolution video file. You have the clips in your timeline. To export that file and turn it into a solid movie you can experience on your screen, you need the processor to work at maximum power for hours. If your thermal hardware fails, the rendering is interrupted, the heart is the graphics processing unit, and the thoracic bridge is the data bus of your manifestation. It is the core. To render an expansive reality in your temporal timeline, your heart must maintain the magnetic field of that reality unyieldingly, providing the electromagnetic energy until the quantum render reaches 100%. If your thoracic field collapses into doubt or fear, you abort the rendering. You collapse into the wrong particle. The topology of pectoral collapse, shadow armor. Given the immense responsibility of this region, it is no wonder that the greatest geometric tragedy of the modern human occurs precisely here. The internal Feng Shui of the average individual in the 21st century is a disaster in the thoracic zone. The predominant posture is exacerbated thoracic kyphosis, sunken chest. We spend our lives hunched over screens, instinctively protecting our center. This geometric deformity is not just the result of gravity and poor ergonomics. It is a psycho-emotional armor. The heart, being an immensely sensitive receiver and transmitter, registers the pain of rejection and loss as high-voltage shocks. To avoid future emotional short circuits, the body's somatic intelligence alters its topology. It contracts the pectoral fascia, pulls the shoulders inward, and uses the 12 thoracic vertebrae and the ribs as a biological Faraday cage, designed to block the entry and exit of electromagnetic signals. You have isolated yourself. When you sink your chest, you are shortening the radius, bowels, of your heart's magnetic toroid. You are literally suffocating your own capacity to influence the quantum field. A collapsed thoracic bridge turns your antenna into a closed deaf-mute circuit. You can generate electricity in the lumbars, but the wave will dissipate. Thoracic tuning practices breaking the cage. Reopening the 12-node bridge is not a task for the faint of heart. It requires dismantling the fascial steel armor you have spent decades building. It requires topological courage, the willingness to expose your magnetic center to the world, knowing that an open antenna picks up both the noise of pain and celestial music. To restore the Feng dimension in the thorax and calibrate the magnetic field, you must apply 3 fundamental protocols of bio-quantum engineering. Orthogonal extension, opening the resonance chamber. You must physically reverse chronic kyphosis. This is achieved by lifting the sternum toward the infinite sky. Visualize a golden thread anchored in the exact center of your sternum, pulling diagonally up and forward. As the sternum rises, the 12 thoracic vertebrae are forced out of their curvature of defeat, approaching the vertical line of the z-axis. The ribs spread like a fan. You have created space for the toroid to expand. Toroidal coherence breathing. With the chamber open, we must tune the main oscillator. Heart coherence is a measurable state where heart rate variability, HRV, draws a smooth sine wave. Direct your attention to the heart space. Imagine your breath enters and leaves directly through a portal in the center of the sternum. Inhale for 5 seconds, feeling air feed the heart's magnetic fire. Exhale for 5 seconds, visualizing that magnetism expanding into a glowing toroid around you. This 10-second cycle, 6 breaths per minute, is the natural resonance frequency of the cardiovascular system. You have calibrated the phase of your signal, releasing emotional cache memory, thermodynamic forgiveness. An upright posture is useless if the hard drive of your thoracic bridge is full of corrupt files. Resentment and grudges are real electromagnetic constructs. They are low-frequency standing waves trapped in the crystalline network of your heart's fascia. Holding a grudge requires constant thermodynamic expenditure. It is like having heavy programs running in the background of your computer, consuming 90% of your RAM. Forgiveness is a thermodynamic and mathematical necessity. It is the act of selecting the trauma file and permanently deleting it from the cache. By forgiving, you instantly regain gigabytes of magnetic bandwidth. The tension in the 12 thoracic vertebrae dissolves. The magnetic field of your heart, freed from the ballast of dead memory, shoots outward with a massive radius of influence. You are now a high-fidelity transmitter of the great central sun's order. Magnetic baptism and the ascent to the bottleneck. When the thoracic bridge is clear, aligned, and resonating in coherence, the physical experience of the human being mutates irrevocably. The plasma current rising from the lumbars enters the vault of the chest and is baptized by the heart's magnetic fire. Selfish will dissolves, replaced by a sense of interconnection. You understand, through the sensitivity of the toroidal field, that you are not separate from the environment. You are an antenna simultaneously transmitting and receiving in an infinite network of information. Your very presence begins to alter the topology of the rooms you enter. People synchronize with your order. You become a walking generator of peace, a 3D anchor for the great central sun's harmony. But the journey of energy has not yet concluded. The magnetic signal, now purified and amplified, continues its relentless ascent. The hyper-resonant plasma wave must leave the vast immensity of the thoracic cage behind. It must face the narrowest and most delicate geometric test of the entire central axis. It must pass through the bottleneck. It must compress, raise its vibration frequency to laser levels, and interact with the portal of expression, the word, and the articulation of material sound. We approach the border of the throat. Chapter 7. The Cervical Axis. The narrowing of the hourglass. The ascension of consciousness through the vertebral antenna is an exercise in constant thermodynamic distillation. We have extracted dense energy from the earth through the root nodes, vaporized it in the furnace of the lumbar dynamo, and transformed it into a massive electromagnetic field within the resonance chamber of the heart. The biophysical plasma that now ascends is pure, expansive, and charged with magnetic empathy. However, for this energy not to dissipate like a formless cloud, it must be focused. It must acquire the precision of a laser. The geometric design of the human being imposes here a fascinating topological test, the vastness of the thoracic cage. The thoracic cage comes to an end, and the conduit narrows dramatically. We enter the cervical axis, the bridge of 7 vertebrae, C1 to C7, that supports the skull. Visualize the entire spine as a hyperdimensional hourglass. The wide base of the pelvis and torso converge toward a narrow and fragile bottleneck in the throat. It converges before expanding again into the vast dome of the brain. The 7 cervical vertebrae are the funnel through which the infinite must compress itself to become the word. It is the zone of highest frequency pressure in the entire system. If the Feng dimension is not maintained here with absolute rigor, high-frequency energy fails. It will collide against the walls of the conduit, generating a deafening noise that will fragment the mind before it can touch the higher intellect. To understand the magnitude of what occurs in the cervical axis, we must apply the principles of fluid dynamics to our internal ocean, the cerebrospinal fluid of the central nervous system. Fluid dynamics and high frequency. When the upward flow of this ionized liquid crystal leaves the breadth of the thoracic canal and enters the cervical spinal canal, it encounters a drastic reduction in cross-sectional area. According to the principle of continuity and the Venturi effect in fluid physics, when a tube's cross-section decreases, fluid velocity must increase. Velocity must increase to conserve mass. Mathematically, this is expressed as $1 where $, is the cross-sectional area and $v$ is the fluid velocity. By decreasing $2 in the neck, the velocity $v2 of the biophysical plasma skyrockets. In wave physics, higher velocity in a restricted medium means a higher frequency. If the lumbars were the subwoofer handling the low frequencies of the will, and the thoracics the mid-range speakers equalizing emotion, the 7 cervical vertebrae are the high-fidelity tweeter of your biological system. They handle the sharpest, fastest, and most penetrating frequencies of reality, analytical thought and communication. They handle complex communication and the transmutation of intent into mechanical sound waves. The cervical axis is a short-range particle accelerator, but this hyper-elevated speed comes with a thermodynamic price. A system operating at such high frequency requires perfect cooling and spatial flow. If there is a blockage, it fails. A subluxated vertebra or a spasmodic neck muscle generates friction from this high-speed fluid, producing thermal throttling. The nervous system, like an overheated computer processor, drastically reduces its performance so as not to melt. We experience this as brain fog, inability to articulate words, and tension migraines. We feel a total disconnection between what we feel in the chest and what our mind manages to process. The creative word and cymatic rendering are key here. In the exact center of this hourglass narrowing, the vocal cords inhabit. From a mechanistic perspective, they are simple folds of mucous tissue that vibrate with the passage of air. The creative word and cymatic rendering. From the physics of the bio-quantum antenna, they are the final transducer of your reality. We have spoken of how the heart holds the magnetic field of desire, forcing the probability wave function closer to collapse. But the final collapse, the definitive act of precipitating quantum energy into measurable matter, requires a code. That executable code is articulated sound. It is the word. The science of cymatics visually demonstrates how sound waves alter matter. When you expose a physical medium, like water or sand on a metal plate, to specific sound frequencies, inert matter spontaneously organizes into complex and symmetrical sacred geometries. It is form. Sound is not a byproduct of the vacuum, it is an architectural force. When electromagnetic plasma ascends through your spinal cord and crosses the cervical region, it energizes the vagus nerve and the larynx. In that moment, your words cease to be exhaled air to become rendering commands for the quantum field. You are the creator. If the energy has been purified through a coherent heart and ascends through an orthogonally aligned neck, your voice acquires the capacity to alter the refractive index of the space around you. However, the cervical axis is relentless with dissonance. If you have the z-axis misaligned, electromagnetic waves suffer clipping. The signal of your intention hits the muscular and bony blockages of your throat, cutting off the wave peaks. The result is a word without power. You speak, you affirm your desires, you mutter your projects, but the words fall dead to the ground. They lack the harmonic bandwidth necessary to restructure the arena of your reality. They are a compressed, low-resolution audio file that the universe simply discards as background noise. For your word to be law in the material plane, the fiber optic channel of the 7 cervical vertebrae must be immaculate. There can be no distortion between the source signal, the heart, and the output interface, the voice. The thyroid gland, the system's internal clock. Housed directly in front of vertebrae C5 to C7, hugging the trachea like a butterfly of glandular tissue, is the thyroid. It is the human biological metronome. The thyroid secretes hormones that dictate the basal metabolism of every cell in the body. In hardware terms, it is the motherboard's crystal oscillator for the system. It determines the clock speed at which your biology operates. If the thyroid is slow, your refresh rate decreases. The body stores inertia, thought becomes viscous, and manifestation slows to a halt. If it is overactive, the system functions at an unsustainable frequency, burning its reserves and generating anxiety and magnetic arrhythmias. The state of the Feng dimension in your cervical axis directly dictates the health of this central clock. When the neck projects forward unnaturally, mechanical tension in the anterior cervical fascia literally strangles the thyroid gland. Its blood flow is reduced, and more critically, the electric field of the nerves is altered. The universe did not endow you with a thyroid for it to be compressed under the weight of a misaligned head. By restoring the orthogonality of the cervical vertebrae, you return vital space to this gland. The metronome of your metabolism stabilizes, and your biology begins to operate in perfect sync with the cosmic time of pulses. Your voice is not just communication, it is the acoustic percussion that shapes the water of reality. If your neck is blocked, you are playing a drum with a broken membrane. Holding the firmament is a physical reality. Of all the topological aberrations of the modern human, forward head syndrome is the most destructive. Holding the firmament, the physics of cervical collapse. It is the most lethal dead corner of our architecture. An adult human head weighs between 4.5 and 5 kilograms. When your 7 cervical vertebrae are stacked in their natural lordosis, forming a smooth and flexible curve directly over the shoulders, that weight is transferred directly through the center of gravity of the z-axis. It descends toward the earth without muscular effort. However, for every 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch, that your head projects forward of its center of gravity, the relative weight your neck base must support increases by an additional 4.5 kilograms due to the physical laws of levers and torque. The multiplier is relentless. RMSA. Where the torque, TU, increases linearly as the radius TU, the distance of the head forward, grows, multiplying the gravitational force upfields. If you spend your days looking at a screen with your head 3 inches forward, your fragile cervical axis is struggling to hold nearly 20 kilograms of constant static tension. It breaks. This is not a simple matter of neck pain, it is an electromagnetic catastrophe. To prevent the spinal cord from tearing under this brutal torque, the body responds by creating emergency scaffolding. Fascia thickens and calcifies. The upper trapezius and levator scapulae muscles become rigid steel cables. Space collapses. Intervertebral space collapses, crushing the discs. You have created an insurmountable bottleneck. The fiber optic cable of the spinal cord is being chronically pinched. But what is the metaphysical cause? The cervical axis tilts forward because the human mind is perpetually trying to inhabit the future. You are rushing. The head projects toward what is to come, pulling the body behind it in a state of perpetual urgency. At the same time, the shoulders rise toward the ears as a primitive defense mechanism, preparing for a blow that never arrives, carrying the weight of the firmament with the responsibility of a universe we think we control. To restore flow in the antenna, you must renounce the illusion that you have to hold up the sky. You must return the head to the exact coordinate of the present time. Oral cache memory and jaw tension are linked. There is an emotional safety valve directly connected to upper cervical tension, the temporomandibular joint. Oral cache memory and jaw tension. When the ascending plasma of will and emotion reaches the throat, it demands expression. However, from childhood, we are taught to stifle our truth to maintain social order. We swallow words, repress cries of anger, and choke back tears. In quantum physics, energy does not disappear. It remains stored in the biological buffer. The vibration of an unspoken word is an aborted electromagnetic wave. This energy lodges in the masseter muscles of the jaw and the deep neck musculature. At night, when the conscious mind shuts down, the somatic system tries to dissipate this accumulated charge by clenching and grinding the teeth, known as bruxism. A clenched jaw is the equivalent of having the handbrake on while trying to accelerate a vehicle's engine. It blocks the first 2 cervical vertebrae, atlas and axis, and radiates tension downward, solidifying the cervical axis. The jaw acts as a cache memory where all the rendering commands, words, are temporarily stored. They are words you never dared to execute. For the great central sun's signal to cross the bottleneck without distortion, you must empty this cache memory. You must return slack to the joint's mechanism. Restoring the Feng dimension in the neck hourglass requires a combination of passive realignment and active vibration. Cervical and acoustic calibration practices. You cannot stretch your neck into health. You must persuade the fascia to untangle through resonance and orthogonality. Apply these 3 biological technologies to clear the channel. The orthogonal plumb line, mandibular retraction. To eliminate destructive torque, you must perform a horizontal translation movement. Imagine your head rests on a sliding rail. Place 2 fingers on your chin and gently push it back in a straight line, as if trying to create a double chin. Do not tilt your head. Keep your gaze parallel to the floor. You will feel a deep stretch at the skull base. You are returning the weight to the center of gravity. Frequency sweep, vocal toning. We must clean the acoustic chamber of the throat using your own vocal cords. Sitting in the plumb line, inhale deep. As you exhale, emit a long, sustained U or M sound. Start at a low pitch and gradually raise it like a frequency sweep on an equalizer. Find the resonance of the blockage. Notice where you feel physical vibration. When you find a frequency where your voice breaks or feels raspy, stop there. That is the resonance frequency of your emotional blockage in the cervical axis. Hold that specific tone for several minutes. Use the sound as an acoustic jackhammer to pulverize fascial calcification, releasing the cache memory, the deep sigh. To unblock masseter tension and vagus restriction, you must give the body the biological signal of surrender. Several times a day, open your mouth as wide as you can without pain. Move the lower jaw from side to side, then let it drop slightly, separating the teeth. Sign aloud. The sigh is the body's natural mechanism for resetting the autonomic nervous system. By letting go of the jaw and emitting this sound without resistance, you are purging unspoken words and allowing the pressure valve of the head to open. You are clearing the path for the final transmission to the higher centers of processing. The purification of the signal. When the cervical axis regains its natural lordosis and the tension of holding up the firmament dissipates, the experience of consciousness changes drastically. The sense of perpetual urgency, the white noise of always being ahead of the present, vanishes. The head rests majestically on the shoulders once again. The flow of cerebrospinal fluid passes through the bottleneck without resistance. Turbulent pressure becomes a high-pressure laminar jet directed straight into the brain's vaults. Your voice acquires a different timbre. Thoracic resonance blends with cervical purity, creating a magnetic and resounding tone. The word is law. People begin to hear you differently, not because of the volume of your voice, but because of the thermodynamic weight and wave coherence your words carry. You have learned to encode clean quantum commands, but the journey still has one last mechanical threshold to cross before information explodes into pure consciousness. At the top of this hourglass, where the last cervical vertebra touches the skull, reside the 2 most delicate and determining guardians of the antenna. We have cleaned the canal. Now we must adjust the crystal compass at the mountain's peak. We approach the domain of Atlas and Axis. The crowning of the axis is imminent. Chapter 8. Atlas and Axis, the Crystal Compass. The journey of energy along the vertebral antenna is an odyssey of constant refinement. We have extracted raw power from terrestrial gravity in the root nodes, transmuted it into biomechanical fire in the lumbar dynamo, expanded it in a magnetic field of empathy in the thoracic chamber, and finally compressed and accelerated it. The biophysical plasma wave, now vibrating at a very high frequency and charged with the creative word, approaches the end of its physical journey. We are about to cross the definitive border. We are approaching the 0 point of human anatomy, the exact articulation where the dense matter of the body surrenders to the hologram. At the summit of this hourglass, supporting the weight of the cranial vault, are the 2 most singular, misunderstood, and architecturally perfect vertebrae in all of biology, C1 and C2, known respectively as Atlas and Axis. In the topology of the Feng dimension, this set is not simply a joint support. It is the tuner. It is the micrometric precision tuner of your antenna. It is the crystal compass. If this compass is deviated by even a fraction of a millimeter, all the immense electromagnetic energy you have cultivated from the base will crash against a wall of static before it can illuminate the pineal gland. Precision is absolute here. Myth and machine, the anatomy of a perfect anomaly. To understand the quantum magnitude of C1 and C2, we must observe their design. They are a total anomaly in the spinal column. The atlas, C1, receives its name from the Titan of Greek mythology, condemned to hold the sky on his shoulders. But unlike the rest of the vertebrae, the atlas has no vertebral body. It is a ring. It is a ring of pure bone, a sacred washer upon which the occipital bone condyles rest. It possesses no spinous process protruding backward. It is the wedding ring between the body and the brain. Just below it lies the axis, C2, which means axis. Its most amazing feature is a peg-shaped bony protrusion called the dens. This protrusion, the odontoid process, projects upward, penetrating directly into the center of the atlas ring. Together they form the atlantoaxial joint. Here lies the greatest biomechanical secret. There is no intervertebral disc between the atlas and the axis. Along the spine, discs act as buffers, absorbing energy. But at the top, evolution, or the intelligent design of the great central sun, eliminated the buffer. In its place, it designed a geometric pivot of bone against bone, allowing almost the totality of the head's rotational movement. Why eliminate damping at the point of greatest neurological stress? It is a matter of signal. In wave transmission physics, any soft intermediate material absorbs high frequencies. If there were a disk between C1 and C2, it would act as a low-pass filter, silencing the most subtle and sharp frequencies of cosmic intuition. This joint is designed to be a direct contact, an uninterrupted bridge for quantum info. The quality factor, Q, and the fine frequency tuner. In radio frequency engineering, when you build a resonant circuit to capture a specific signal among thousands of radio waves crossing the air, tuner precision is everything. This level of precision is measured through the quality factor, Q, of the circuit. Q, the F, R, whiff, or is the resonance frequency. A circuit with a low Q factor picks up a lot of static. It mixes stations, distorts audio, and produces white noise. A circuit with a high Q factor is a laser. It discards all environmental noise and pins itself exactly to the frequency of absolute truth, delivering a crystalline signal. Atlas and axis determine your Q factor. They are the fine-tuning knob of your consciousness. When the atlas is micrometrically misaligned, due to whiplash, birth trauma, chronic stress, or the weight of a mind overanalyzing the future, the central hole through which the spinal cord passes narrows. The ring is no longer perfectly centered on the axis. This microscopic subluxation collapses your biological Q factor. The antenna loses its orthogonal precision. The pure electrical signal rising is forced to dodge an unnatural curve, creating electromagnetic turbulence at the brain's base. You have the power of a master, but the clarity of a broken television. The guardian of the threshold, the brainstem and vagus nerve. The true danger of a miscalibrated crystal compass is not just the loss of cosmic intuition, it is the tyranny of primitive biology. Right through the atlas ring passes the most vital structure of human survival, the brainstem and the medulla oblongata. This is your reptilian brain. Here, heart rate and breathing are controlled, controlling heart rate, blood pressure, and fight-or-flight responses. Additionally, emerging from the skull just millimeters from the atlas joint, the most important cranial nerve for holistic health descends, the vagus nerve. It is the command cable of the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for peace. When the atlas is out of its z-axis, it exerts direct mechanical pressure and shear stress on the dura mater and the brainstem. The reptilian brain interprets this mechanical irritation at the base of the skull in only one way: a mortal threat. It triggers a state of survival that overrides all spiritual growth. It does not matter how many hours you meditate or how many decrees of abundance you utter. If your atlas is pinching your brainstem, the guardian will activate the general alarm. Your sympathetic nervous system will enter hyperactivity. It will bathe your body in cortisol and adrenaline. It keeps you in fear. Aligning the atlas and axis is the act of turning off the body's fire alarm. It is communicating to the primitive brain through spatial geometry that the war is over. Only when the brainstem feels the space around it is wide and orthogonal does it allow the vagus nerve to activate the vagal tone of light. Vagal tone is the biological substrate of enlightenment, the state of deep relaxation, security, and dilation of consciousness that allows access to the higher functions of the cortex and multidimensional vision. You must pacify the guardian to enter the temple. The crystal compass must be calibrated for the voyage. Hydrodynamics of the foramen magnum and the biophoton cascade. Upon crossing the atlas ring, energy enters the cranial vault through the foramen magnum. Here, the hydrodynamics of the cerebrospinal fluid reaches its peak. Remember that CSF is a superconducting liquid crystal. Passing through the restrictive cervical funnel, it has gained immense velocity and kinetic charge. When it finally crosses the foramen magnum and enters the brain's vast cavities, it experiences a sudden expansion. In fluid mechanics, abrupt expansion generates shock waves and vortices. If the atlas is misaligned, this expansion is turbulent and asymmetrical, hitting delicate structures in an erratic way. But if the crystal compass is perfectly oriented toward the north, the fluid ascends as a pure laminar jet, a fountain of liquid energy that hits the roof of the third ventricle with micrometric precision. And what is suspended in the roof of the third ventricle? The pineal gland. It is waiting for the bath. The pineal gland is not just an endocrine organ, it is a piezoelectric transducer. It contains calcite microcrystals structured in rhombohedral geometries. When the pressurized jet of CSF, charged with lumbar voltage and heart magnetism, physically hits these crystals, mechanical pressure becomes light. The piezoelectric effect in the pineal gland triggers a cascade of biophotons. Your brain literally lights up from within. The gland transmutes ordinary chemistry into superior psychoactive metabolites. You have completed the circuit. You have brought the Earth's raw force to the exact center of your brain. The opening of the lotus and crystal clarity. In the yogic tradition, this event is described as the union of Shakti with Shiva, resulting in the opening of the Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus. From our bio-quantum physics perspective, the opening of the lotus is the total eradication of render lag in your three-dimensional experience. It is instant. When the signal passes cleanly through a perfectly tuned atlas and axis, mental fog dissipates instantly. You experience what Zen masters call satori, or crystalline lucidity. You no longer observe reality through the filter of past traumas or future fears, because the brainstem guardian has been pacified. You observe reality exactly as it is, a geometric and malleable flow of information. The illusion of separation between you and the world collapses. You understand with unshakable certainty that the reality you are experiencing is being projected by you through the lens of your own tuned antenna. The crystal compass no longer points to Earth's magnetic north. It points to the singularity of the present instant. You have become the cosmic axis. You are the point where the infinite and the finite intersect in perfect harmony. The rendering of your life is now happening in real-time high definition. Micrometric calibration, adjusting the dial. Because the atlas and axis lack a bulky intervertebral disc and are suspended by a complex network of small ligaments, forcing their alignment with sudden movements can be counterproductive. You cannot hammer the compass to point north. You must persuade the needle with magnetic and subtle precision. The Feng dimension at the skull's peak is reached through micrometric consciousness and neuro-reprogramming. Here are the biological technologies to tune your crystal compass. The ocular suboccipital connection. There is a direct neurological circuit between your eye muscles and the suboccipital muscles. When your eyes move erratically, scanning for threats, your suboccipital muscles tense in microspasms, misaligning the atlas. To release this, use your eyes. Lie on your back. Keep your head still. Move your eyes slowly to the right as far as possible for 30 seconds. Then repeat to the left. Relax the nerve. The spheno-basilar float, balance point. The head should not feel like a bowling ball bolted to the neck. It should feel like a buoy floating in water. Sit in silence. Place 2 fingers gently in the indentations just below your skull base. Visualize your head is a helium balloon. Do not use muscles. Find the sweet spot, the exact place of weightlessness where the helium balloon pulls upward and the atlas clicks into place. When you find it, your breathing will spontaneously become deeper and silent. You have tuned the frequency. The pressure is gone, and the alignment is mathematically perfect. The light injection, pineal focus breath. Once the atlas is centered and the Q factor is optimal, you must turn on the receiver. Using the spinal breathing technique, draw the CSF current upward. As the wave reaches the atlas bottleneck, apply absolute mental focus in the center of your brain. Imagine the atlas hole as a magnifying glass concentrating a sunbeam. While holding the breath, visualize that laser of pressurized fluid hitting a crystal in the center of your forehead from inside. Feel the pressure. As you exhale, visualize the crystal bursting into a radiant white light. You are on. The final step, entering the quantum backbone. The calibration of the crystal compass is the final physical requirement before the antenna can access the quantum backbone, the invisible network of dark matter that coordinates the architecture of the 3D world. You have moved beyond the public internet of social consciousness and into the private server of the soul. In this state, you are no longer a user of the matrix, you are a co-administrator. Because your signal is bit perfect and your latency is 0, your commands are written to the reality buffer without the usual filtration of the ego's firewall. The universe responds to your frequency as if it were its own. This is the responsibility of the tuned monarch. You must maintain the orthogonal precision of your compass at all times. A single thought of resentment or a moment of slumping into old patterns can introduce jitter into your transmission. You must become the guardian of your own crystal compass. Thermal integrity and the superconducting state. A perfectly tuned antenna allows for the state of superconductivity, where the current of your will flows through your nerves with 0 resistance. In the biomass, energy is lost as heat, anxiety, physical inflammation, and emotional friction. In the sovereign, all energy is converted into light. You will notice that your physical body requires less maintenance. Your sleep becomes deeper and more restorative because the brainstem is in a state of safety. Your digestion is optimized by the vagus nerve. Your hardware is no longer being burnt out by the static of the 3rd dimension. This thermal integrity is what allows you to sustain the high-voltage download from the great central sun. You have built a biological chassis that can handle the power of a star. You are a high-speed data link between the abyss of the vacuum and the density of the Earth. The circuit is fully operational. The end of physical architecture. With the calibration of the atlas and axis, we have completed the structure of the 33-node antenna. The hardware is aligned, we have eradicated dead corners. The grounding in the sacrum is firm and deep. The lumbar dynamo roars silently with creative will. The heart amplifies the signal with an immense toroid. The throat translates that energy into pure vibration codes, and the crystal compass directs the flow with absolute quantum precision. Your physical body has ceased to be a survival machine. It has been transformed, cell by cell, into a monolith of superconductivity. The purely anatomical work has concluded. But a perfectly tuned antenna is meaningless if we do not turn on the shortwave receiver and begin to listen. What follows is not physiology, it is internal astrophysics. It is the direct experience of the cosmic connection. The gates are about to open wide. The signal is about to flood your system. The signal descending from the vacuum of space, loaded with the architectural blueprints of reality itself, is about to inundate your nervous system. You are no longer waiting for the future. You are witnessing the render. The crystal compass is locked on target. We are ready for contact. Chapter 9: Cosmic Synchronization and Information Download. We have spent the last 8 chapters building, cleaning, and calibrating the most sophisticated technology in the known universe. We have descended to the depths of gravity with the sacrum, ignited the thermodynamic furnace in the lumbars, expanded the magnetic field in the thoracic vault, and focused the signal through the crystal compass. The biological hardware is no longer a structure collapsed by 3-dimensional trauma. It is a superconducting monolith. The 33-node antenna is erect, orthogonal, and operating in a state of pristine conductivity. But an antenna, no matter how perfect its topology, lacks purpose if the receiver is not turned on to decode the transmission. The universe is not a silent vacuum, it is saturated with information. The great central sun, whether we conceptualize it as the gravitational core of our galaxy or as the supreme metaphor for source intelligence, is constantly emitting scalar and photonic waves that contain the architectural blueprints of reality. You are the terminal. When your bioquantum axis reaches phase coherence, the barrier between you and the field dissolves. You cease to be a closed system that reacts to the world, and you become an open terminal that downloads cosmic data in real time. This chapter explores the phenomenology of that connection and how it physically feels to sync up. The phenomenology of phase coherence. In wave physics, phase coherence occurs when multiple waves vibrate in unison, sharing the same frequency and temporal alignment. Their crests and valleys coincide micrometrically. Mathematically, the total amplitude of a system of 33 harmonic oscillators, your vertebrae, is maximized when the phase angle, papigao, of each node is identical. 10 kafin hasumpindi AIE tala. When you achieve TK5 foreign manjays and main NDP non-2 nain dots, NDP mam1, destructive interference disappears. The resulting amplitude, episidem, is not simply a linear sum, it is an exponential explosion of resonance. How is this equation experienced in flesh and bone? The first symptom of cosmic synchronization is neurological silence. It is structural. The average human mind is an incessant generator of white noise. It oscillates between the anxiety of the future and the rumination of the past. But when the spine enters phase coherence, the excess activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for the ego narrative, shuts down abruptly. Energy flows with efficiency. Physically, you experience a high-frequency hum, almost imperceptible, at the base of the skull and along the spine. You feel the body amazingly light, as if gravity had lost 50% of its grip on your mass. The cerebrospinal fluid, now pumping without resistance, generates a sensation of electric coolness bathing the brain. In this state, peripheral vision expands. The colors of the 3D environment seem to saturate, acquiring a hyper-realistic sharpness. You are not hallucinating. You are processing the hologram of reality with a higher bandwidth. Your biological motherboard is using 100% of its resources to render the present moment. The holographic download, how information arrives. The most common mistake of spiritual seekers is to expect the voice of the universe to speak to them in their native language, structuring linear phrases in their heads. If you hear a chatty voice dictating what to do, it is usually a subroutine of your own subconscious. The great central sun does not speak in logical sequences. The quantum field transmits in holographic data packets. When the antenna is tuned, information arrives in the form of downloads. A cosmic download is the instantaneous transfer of a massive block of knowledge that does not require a process of rational deduction. In a microsecond, you know something with absolute geometric certainty. To understand this, we can turn to Claude Shannon's information theory. The amount of information, I1, that an event carries is inversely proportional to its probability of occurrence, p dou. Di p are at log 2p. Ordinary rational thought has a high probability, p(0) It is predictable and contains very little new information. However, the holographic download is an event of extremely low statistical probability from the ego's point of view. It is an idea that could not have emerged from your personal database. Having a p(dou) close to 0, the amount of cosmic information, I(dou) it carries tends toward infinity. It is felt physically before words appear. It enters through the receptor crystal of the pineal gland, descends through the fiber optics of the neck, and hits the magnetic field of the heart. Certainty is not experienced as a logical conclusion, this makes sense, but as a structural resonance, this is true. The holographic download has the mathematical solidity of an axiom. Synchronicity, the language of the unified field. As you sustain the calibration of your vertebral antenna over days and weeks, data transfer ceases to be a purely internal phenomenon. The universe begins to use the 3D environment as an external display screen to communicate with you. You enter the realm of synchronicity. Coincidence is actually a thermodynamic byproduct. Carl Jung defined synchronicity as the temporal coincidence of two or more events, not causally related, that have a deep meaning for the observer. From the bioquantum physics paradigm, synchronicity is the inevitable result of a nervous system operating in high coherence. Your heart is an immense magnetic generator. When your z-axis is orthogonal and your cerebrospinal fluid is ionized, the toroidal field of your heart expands exponentially. You are radiating a highly organized electromagnetic interference pattern into the quantum field. Matter and events around you, which once seemed chaotic, begin to be dragged by the gravity of your coherence. The outer field folds to reflect the order of your inner field. You think of an out-of-print book you need, and the next day someone leaves it forgotten on the seat next to you on the subway. There is no separation between your 33-node antenna and the city. External reality is forced by hyperdimensional physics to reorganize for you. The entropic friction of the third dimension. If the experience of cosmic synchronization is so amazing, why do we not live in this state permanently? The answer lies in the thermodynamics of the environment. Our three-dimensional plane and the society in which we operate are governed by the law of entropy, the inexorable tendency of every closed system to move toward chaos. Maintaining a 33-node vertebral antenna in perfect orthogonal alignment and phase coherence is a state of low entropy, high order. It requires a constant injection of consciousness. The moment you withdraw your attention from the axis, physical gravity and the collective magnetic field of the environment begin to decalibrate you. We live immersed in an electromagnetic network saturated with white noise. Collective anxiety and the collapsed posture of people around us generate chaotic magnetic fields. If your consciousness is not a sustained laser, external chaos will induce parasitic currents in your spinal cord. You will slump without even noticing it. In a matter of hours, the antenna has deformed. The liquid crystal of the cord flows with turbulence again. The connection to the great central sun is cut, and you find yourself again operating as an isolated biological system, feeling heavy, exhausted, and at the mercy of external circumstances. You must defend your order. Bioquantum maintenance protocols. Enlightenment is not an academic degree you hang on the wall. It is a thermodynamic state that must be defended daily against the erosion of the third dimension. To sustain your conductivity, you must establish a non-negotiable bioquantum maintenance routine. You must clean the nodes of your spine just as an engineer cleans a server. Mechanical maintenance, spiral movement. The human body detests straight lines. To keep the CSF in its crystalline phase, incorporate spiral movement. Upon waking, sit on the edge of the bed and trace the infinity symbol, infti, with the crown of your head. This lazy 8 movement releases residual stress and pumps fresh fluid. Acoustic maintenance, toroidal resonance. During the day, you will interact with situations that force your thoracic chamber to close. Midday, stand in orthogonal alignment. Place your fingertips on the center of your sternum. Take a deep breath and emit a low vocal tone. This sound physically breaks the standing waves of tension. Spatial maintenance, trench Feng Shui. The antenna does not end at your skin. Your electromagnetic biofield extends several meters. If your workspace is a chaos of aggressive angles, your body will waste energy fighting it. Organize your exterior space with geometric intention to reduce the processing load on your nervous system. The solitude of the geometer and the collective network. Applying these protocols will make you temporarily incompatible with general society's entropy. Banal conversations and crowded places will feel physically exhausting, like static overload. This solitude of the geometer is a necessary transition. As your capacity to sustain higher voltages increases, you become a stabilizing lighthouse. Instead of chaos decalibrating you, your phase coherence will force the chaos around you into alignment. By sustaining cosmic synchronization, you prepare for the ultimate climax of the bioquantum axis. You have learned to purify the water and read the data. Your body is a cylinder of awakened consciousness. You are almost there. There is still a slight lapse, a tiny delay between the moment the great central sun emits the pulse and the moment you interpret and act on it. The final goal is to completely collapse the duality between the emitter and the receiver. We are now heading toward the last stage of development. We are preparing for Ping Zero. Chapter 10. Ping Zero, the Singularity of the Instant. The fundamental drama of the human condition is not mortality, nor the fragility of the flesh, nor the entropy that wears down our cells. The true drama, the original wound of our species, is the delay. We inhabit a state of perpetual latency. From the moment the light of a distant star touches our retina, a measurable interval of time passes. Biologically, we always arrive late to reality. We live, literally, in the past. In telecommunications engineering and computer systems architecture, this lapse between the emission of a data packet and the reception of its response is called ping, or latency. A high ping means that the system is experiencing resistance. Data gets stuck. At a bioquantum level, the average human operates with a disastrously high existential ping. The great central sun emits the pulsation of life, but because our 33-node antenna is saturated with dead corners and emotional noise, the signal takes an eternity to be processed. When we finally react, the universe has already moved on. The supreme goal of tuning your spine, the climax of this anatomical technology, is not simply to have good health. The goal is to eradicate the delay. It is to reach the hyperdimensional state where the transmission of the cosmos and your biological response occur simultaneously. Welcome to Ping Zero. Welcome to the Singularity. The physics of biological latency. To understand the thermodynamic feat that Ping Zero represents, we must analyze why we experience latency in the first place. Classical neurobiology teaches us that nerve impulses travel through axons via ionic exchange. This transmission is fast for biological standards, but it is still subject to the mechanical laws of friction and mass. That physical journey through the nervous network takes time. Neurological studies estimate a delay of approximately 80 milliseconds between an event and the moment the brain integrates it into conscious experience. Your 3D perception is, in reality, a delayed broadcast. You are watching the universe through constant buffering. However, throughout this book, we have established that the 33-node antenna, when aligned in perfect Feng dimension, operates under the laws of quantum biophysics. Ionized cerebrospinal fluid acts as a liquid crystal, and the myelin sheaths act as fiber optic conduits guiding biophotons. Light does not experience time in that way. According to special relativity, for a photon traveling at speed c dollars, proper time stops. In the context of consciousness connected to the unified field, we enter the domain of quantum entanglement, where information is in multiple points simultaneously. Ping Zero is reached when you stop depending on linear electrochemical conduction. The collapse of chronological time, chronos versus kairos. The ancient Greeks possessed a deep topological understanding of time, distinguishing between chronos and kairos. Chronos is chronological, quantitative time measured by clocks. It is the time of entropy, the merciless straight line that devours matter and pushes us toward death. It is the time of the ego and the analytical mind. Kairos, conversely, is qualitative time. It is the opportune moment, the supreme instant, a turning point where the infinite penetrates vertically into the horizontal flow of material life. Reaching Ping Zero is the temporal annihilation of chronos in favor of kairos. It is a state of quantum superposition applied to human psychology. To illustrate this leap, we can observe Heisenberg's uncertainty principle relating energy, E dollars, and time, T. So delta E and delta T RGQ nahaf reactor. In ordinary experience, our psychic energy, delta W, fluctuates within predictable margins over time, delta T W. But by applying Feng dimension technologies, you concentrate energy. As your presence anchors more and more in the present instant, to delta tau tends towards zero, to delta T O $0. For the equation to remain mathematically valid, the fluctuation of energy, delta E dalu, must tend toward infinity. In Ping Zero, by collapsing the interval, you access an infinite amount of zero-point field energy. Quantum simultaneity, the end of the observer. When you experience latency, An illusory but painful separation exists between you and the universe. This duality is the root of all psychological suffering. The ego is built in the gap of the delay. If you must wait for your desire to manifest, you suffer lack. Ping zero is the absolute collapse of this duality. When the crystal compass, atlas and axis, is perfectly tuned, the 33-node antenna ceases to act as a simple receiver. It becomes the very wave it is receiving. In this state of zero latency, you do not think about moving your arm and then move it. The cosmic order, conscious thought and muscle contraction occur in simultaneity. You are the music itself playing through the flesh. You are the martial artist who blocks the blow before the adversary has conceived it, because in the plane of quantum coherence, information of the future movement is already available in the present instant. You don't have to process reality. You are reality rendering itself. The great central sun pulses, and your life changes instantaneously. You ask, and the manifestation is already occurring in the same breath of the petition, because there is no longer a geometric or temporal distance between the probability wave in the field and the collapse of that wave in your chest. The delay is finally dead. Conscious matter, the body as a hyperdimensional lens. For millennia, ascetic philosophies have taught us to hate the flesh. They have told us the body is an entropic prison. This is the most corrosive lie, a topology error that has kept humanity disconnected from its true power. Ping zero reveals the truth. The body is the exact focal point where the infinite crosses with form. Throughout the refinement of your antenna, you have not been trying to escape biology. You have been purifying carbon, calcium, and water to a state of superconductivity. When zero latency is reached, your biological body mutates conceptually. It ceases to be deaf flesh. It transmutes into conscious matter. The universe needs your 33 vertebrae and the boiling plasma of your nervous system. Without 3D matter to act as resistance and a resonance box, the infinite frequencies of the great central sun would be only ghostly waves crossing the inert vacuum. Your biology is the lens through which the cosmos acquires resolution and texture. By entering Ping zero, the matter of your body acquires self-awareness. Each cell vibrates with the intelligence of the unified field. Skin is no longer a wall. It is the contact surface where your toroidal field shapes holographic reality. You are a fragment of the infinite that has chosen to densify into sacred geometry, living in the singularity, the cosmic axis. How does a human who has reached zero latency look from the outside? They do not hover or emit rays. Physically, they seem ordinary, but their presence drastically alters the spatial topology of the room. Living in Ping zero means walking chaotic streets while holding a column of absolute silence around you. Because you have no delay in processing, there is no reactive reaction. When someone projects fear toward you, the low-frequency signal hits your magnetic field and slides off without finding dead corners. Aggression dissipates in the vacuum of your internal order. Work, relationships, and creativity cease to be exhausting efforts. In mechanics, work, W, is force multiplied by distance. If distance, latency is zero, effort disappears. You stop trying to manifest. Effort is proof that you still believe in friction. In the singularity of the instant, you simply place yourself in alignment, calibrate your frequency, and allow the universe to precipitate. Your words acquire atomic density. Since there is no latency between the truth of the source and your larynx, you do not mumble. You speak with the certainty of a mathematical axiom. Your voice becomes a tool of spatial restructuring for those who listen, forcing their magnetic fields to synchronize with the harmony of the whole. The last topology, emptiness and fullness. Reaching this state demands the total surrender of the personal identity you built, based on your blockages. The ego is a geometric structure formed by your dead angles and pelvic fears. For Ping zero to occur, the you that suffers the passage of time must collapse. In the center of the singularity, a paradox occurs. You feel simultaneously an absolute cosmic emptiness and a heart-wrenching fullness. It is emptiness because the inertia of your personal history has been eradicated. There is no noise. You are an acoustically perfect room. But it is fullness because, in that vacuum, the totality of universal information is available. You are not tuning the radio. You have become the electromagnetic waves, the copper antenna, the speaker, and the music, all at the same time and in the same space. You are the stillness that moves everything. This is the highest state of thermodynamic efficiency possible for a biological entity in the third dimension. Closing the axis. Maintaining zero latency uninterruptedly while inhabiting a society dominated by linear time, chronos, is the greatest challenge of bioquantum mastery. There will be moments when 3D stress or collective suffering push your z-axis out of its orthogonality. Your ping will rise. You will feel the heaviness of matter once again. But the wonder of having known total Feng dimension is that the architecture of your central nervous system remains irremediably altered. Once the spinal cord has carried the voltage of the great central sun without resistance, the paths are traced. The hardware has been permanently optimized for higher conductivity. When you lose sync, you will not need to despair. You know the technology. You will know that anguish is not a punishment, but simply a drop in conductivity. You will return to your foundations. You will anchor your sacrum to discharge static. You will breathe into your lumbars to ignite the dynamo of your will. You will raise the sternum to open the heart, retract the neck to clear the word, and balance the crystal compass at your skull's base. You will adjust the 33 nodes of your spine, one by one, with the patience of an engineer and the devotion of a mystic. The illusion of time will collapse, and you will be in the eternal now. Transmission completed. Your antenna is calibrated. The universe is yours to render. Conclusion: walking as a cosmic axis. You have reached the limit of this text, but the true work of embodiment is only beginning. Throughout these pages, we have dismantled the tyranny of mechanistic biology. We have mapped your anatomy until revealing it as what it fundamentally is, a miracle of bioengineering designed to operate radiantly as conscious matter. However, understanding the quantum physics of your vertebral antenna and the exact topology of your 33 nodes is only holding the architectural blueprint in your hands. Erecting the building within the density of a three-dimensional world is the true art of mastery. It requires constant presence and unwavering structural integrity. It is relatively simple to experience the Feng dimension in the protected sanctuary of your room, in the stillness of deep meditation, or under the refuge of closed eyes. The supreme challenge, the true thermodynamic trial by fire, is to maintain your orthogonal z-axis and your ionized cerebrospinal fluid while walking everyday life. Walking as a cosmic axis means traversing the storms of modern stress, human crises, and the pressures of the clock without slouching your lumbars. It means not sinking your magnetic thoracic bridge and not projecting your neck toward the voracious anxiety of the future. You must remain an upright pillar amidst the chaotic noise. By assuming this unshakable verticality, you acquire an immense frequency responsibility. You are no longer a passive receiver consuming the world's entropy. You have become a transmitting node in the collective electromagnetic network. Wave physics is relentless. A high-coherence oscillator will drag chaotic ones into its own phase. When you walk with your antenna tuned to the pulsations of the great central sun, your simple presence alters the refractive index of the space around you. You pacify the noise of the rooms you enter, not through logical arguments, but through the absolute thermodynamic weight of your wave coherence. You become a stabilizing pillar. The book concludes here, but the principle of infinity dictates that this is barely the dawn of your new architecture. Earth's gravity will always try to bend you, and collective noise will seek to infiltrate your dead corners again. When the static returns and you temporarily lose the signal, do not punish yourself. Simply pause. Root your sacrum in the planet's core, ignite the dynamo of your will, expand the toroid of your heart, and adjust your crystal compass with extreme gentleness. Return to the 0 point. The great central sun never ceases its transmission. It is an inexhaustible torrent of light and information crossing the quantum vacuum right now. Your only vocation from this moment until your last breath is to keep the temple acoustically pure and the antenna majestically erect. Walk with the undeniable certainty of one who knows they are the exact bridge between the dense mud of the earth and the fire of the stars. You are, at last, the universe experiencing itself.